Good day. Welcome back to another episode of the Truck Focus podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hannaberry. So over the years, I've participated in a number of conversations regarding workplace injuries, what to do when injury occurs, how to investigate the incident, and how to even make and manage a claim. So during these conversations, specifically regarding claims and claims management, I find there to be a lot of confusion on what's expected. And a common question is, what exactly am I supposed to do now after a claim is started? So in today's episode, I'm excited to have a conversation with my friend Anthony Butkovic, owner of WCB Consulting. So Consulting is a company that specializes in WCB consulting, training, industry-leading courses, and more. So Anthony works with employers all across Canada to help eliminate confusion, offer experts advice. So I highly recommend that you check them out by visiting www.wcbconsulting.ca. So in today's episode, I'm excited to dive into a little bit of what is claims management with the goal of creating clarity on some of these processes, but more so to highlight why you need to work with Anthony when dealing with claims and to ensure you do the right thing. Well, let's get to it. Welcome to the Truck Focus podcast, Anthony. Super excited to have you on.
I'm excited to be here.
This is awesome, man. I know, a little bit of our backstory when we first kind of connected. One thing that really stood out was the fact that I felt we were like-minded from our first conversation. And yeah, I'm just pumped. This will be a good episode. So thanks for being here.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So why don't you kind of start us off and just share a little bit of your backstory, describe who is Anthony, how do you kind of become, I know not just transportation industry involved, but obviously being in the trucking space, I'll ask that question, but why don't you kind of start us off there?
That's a deep question. Who are you? Who are you really? But no, my background started off, actually, I mean, I don't know how deep you want to go into this, but as a teenager, I played sports. And I thought, I'll do my sports career. I'll go on to the pros and then become a high-powered lawyer and go on and do that kind of thing. But the world had different plans for me, and I went to Grand McEwen College and graduated with a diploma in disability management, and then started working at WCB here in Alberta for 5 years as a case manager. Enjoyed my time, but really the reason I went there was more to learn the system, because I knew I didn't want to stay at the board my entire career. I wanted to go out in private industry. I wanted to be a consultant, someone who's close to the family, was working in a similar space and kind of turned me on to that. So, and the reason I didn't go to law school was because I decided I didn't want to spend 10 years in law school to become a lawyer. With a boatload of debt, I wanted to start my career earlier. So I figured 2 years in school, a little bit of work experience, I could start, doing what I do. And so 5 years, that would have been probably about 2011. I started WCBconsulting.ca, representing employers specifically as it relates to claims management, appeals, and WCB related issues. The reason I chose employers versus workers was I just felt more comfortable in that space. Concurrent to my consulting, I also coach football in the community, and was in 2018, I was lucky enough to join the Montreal Alouettes coaching staff as an assistant coach. So took a little sabbatical from the consulting and pursued that, which really opened my eyes as well to a different way of dealing with people, because when you're stuck in a certain industry, in a certain space for a long period of time, you kind of get comfortable and you don't notice things. And so when I came back from Montreal, this is where I started looking at the industry different, specifically in claims management as it related to WCB. And I decided that one of the things I really wanted my company to focus on was providing resources and training and coaching to health and safety professionals, business professionals, solopreneurs, anyone that ever has to deal with WCB, because the most feedback I got throughout my career was, around the system and what it meant. And I was blessed enough to work with companies across Canada in every industry. The trucking industry is special to me. My dad was in the trucking industry for over 40 years and is well known. depending on the circles that you run in. So, you know, spent a lot of time in that industry with people in that industry. And so I have this special place and connection there. But yeah, so really the last few years there's been a much bigger focus by my firm to really provide training and other services so that if you have a question about WCB, you can come to a resource where the information will be consistent, it'll be up to date, and we think differently than other consultants and other ways of doing things, so that even if you are working with a consultant or you have an internal WCB person, you can benefit from the stuff that we do because we can help you with information. We're not looking to, you know, take that away from anyone. We're actually looking to add and just provide more information, because when you look at health and safety, there is a ton of information out there and it's very focused on prevention. But in my experience, the severity of an incident or an injury is actually determined by how you manage it, what you do after the incident actually occurs. You know, things like mitigating from a lost time to a medical aid or these other things. And now with certain industries taking safety statistics as part of the bid process, that's complicated things as well. And so I've really focused on trying to provide as much help as I can to the professionals in any industry, whoever has to deal with this kind of work.
Power, man, power. Wow, I didn't know that about the owlets. So that's super cool. So we'll dive into that. So a couple of things that you said that really resonates, I'd say, with myself in my journey in transportation. As I remember going through my first NSC audit, so my National Safety Code audit in transportation. And I remember two things. I remember she was really nice, the inspector, the auditor that had our case. So no shade to her, it was not her fault, but I remember her face and I remember the feeling. So we brought in like a little filing box, because you're supposed to bring your documentation into the audit. And I remember putting it down on the table. My business partner at the time sat down. She sat down and we felt good. We're like, yeah, we got this. And she's like, so where's your stuff? We're like, right here in the box. That's the face. Her face was like, are you effing kidding me? And yeah. I remember a little bit of blank space, like almost like a fog over. And then the first thing that we said was, how are we supposed to know all of this? And I know that term is very common in health and safety, and I know it's very common in WCB claims management in that whole sector too. So the fact that, yeah, you were able to identify because of your experience, there's a lot to it, and you're right, it's absolutely. And I remember living that, and that's a driving factor for myself, was it really is to introduce enough leaders to simplify that, so that way people aren't caught off guard. And then I think another thing that you mentioned too was props to your dad as well. I love anyone that's been in the industry for a long time, because they've seen a lot of highs and lows. They've seen massive change, and the fact that, yeah, you can resonate with that and you can own part of his journey through your journey, I think super powerful. And again, that speaks to the industry itself. But yeah, I guess one of my questions to get to where I'm going is, what made you think I'm going to go into claims management? You said Grant MacEwan in Edmonton?
Yeah, Grant MacEwan University. Yeah, they had a disability management course. It's gone now. I was lucky enough to stay on the board as an alumnus while the program was there, trying to improve the program and get more people involved. But yeah, it was Grant MacEwan in Edmonton.
Awesome. Okay, so what was it? The family friend that kind of pushed you that way? Because it's interesting how you mentioned law. So yes, law is a very timely process, and even once you're out, you haven't even started. So yeah, I completely resonate with that mindset. But kind of, I guess, yeah, how did you pick claims management? Because obviously I like the fact that you're an athlete. I like the fact that a lot of my friends back home, especially, they were Okanagan Sun players, and they were very okay, yeah, there you go. So it wouldn't surprise me if we have common relationships just through that journey, similar age, obviously. And yeah, so how did you go in your mind to say, okay, claims management checks enough boxes, where obviously if it's going pro and then becoming a lawyer, there's I can tell you like structure, but I can tell you like simplifying structure so that way other people can live within it. I think coaches do a really good job at that. What kind of, yeah, I guess picked, or how did you pick that avenue again? Or I guess is the question.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. You asked me like 3 questions. I had like 3 different answers as we started going. So this is perfect because I think it'll help round things out a little bit. So yeah, truthfully, and not a lot of people know this, is when I did start off trying to go for law school, and it was I started off in commerce because I thought I'd go be a corporate lawyer. There was just something, since I was a little kid, like, I don't know if you guys had that in school, but you do mock trials. You know, you have to pretend you're a lawyer and defend someone or something. And so I was doing that, and it just jonesed me. Like I loved it. It was so much fun. And then you watch movies. I mean, Tom Cruise telling he wants the truth, right? Like that's what I thought law was, right? And while I was at Grant MacEwan, I was actually in commerce. I started off in commerce, and there was a professor there and asked me what I wanted to do. When I told him, he said, "So you want to spend 10 years and then, you know, start off making 40 grand a year?" And I'm going, no, I don't want to do that at all, actually. And he said, "Well, it's not just, you know, what you do in school, it's volunteer work, it's these other things." So I ended up going on vacation, and this friend of the family was there, and he started telling me about claims management and how it worked and what kind of went into it, and especially on the consultant side. And it sounded like pretty much being a lawyer, just in a different capacity and very specific, very niche. And that's what kind of really got me excited, because he said, you know, you come out of this course with a 2-year diploma, you can start making 75 grand a year, such and such. And I thought, for a 20-year-old kid making 75 grand, that's awesome, right? I mean, this is going back about 15 years. So I thought, yeah, this would be a great idea. So I researched it, got excited, and it just clicked. Like with the first course I took, it just made sense to me. What I like is there's structure, there's boundaries, there's rules, but my personality is to stretch and exploit those rules, and not exploit them in a negative way. What I mean when I say that is, when it comes to WCB, they have a one-track mind often. And one of the things I talk about with clients is, I'm not against WCB. What I'm for is helping you understand the system better, so that when you go to work with something, you know how to stretch the, you know, perceptions of policy. You can ask certain things. But I find there's a lot of times there's this fear associated with WCB. So what I was really good at was stretching things. Is that school teaches you theory. And when I got to WCB, I found that now it came down to dollars and cents in a lot of situations. So why I chose it was because it gave me everything that I truly enjoyed and allowed my natural passions to run free. Nice. And so that's why I chose claims management the way that I did.
Powerful, man. Yeah, I think, well, I'll ask the question, I won't assume it, but you grew up playing sports too?
Yes.
Yes. So I think that's something that, like, I started, I think I was 6 or 7 playing soccer, and then playing street basketball, dabbled in football. And I think, yeah, something that coaches can really help form adolescents, youth, and teenagers into doing is understanding what they like. And I remember that started for me picking my basketball jersey number, picking my soccer jersey number, to what position did you actually want to play, but having that confidence in yourself to be like, no, this is what I like, this is what I'm passionate about, really, I could see helped you make that decision, because that's a big jump. Similar direction, I agree. But it's funny because, not funny, but I think I use the term funny because I get jacked, but you mentioned again some things where I'm like, man, so similar to my story, just in a little different way, because I was dead set after I moved to Alberta to become a law enforcement officer. And that's when I resonated more with health and safety. Is, no, it's not the same as law enforcement officers, but a lot of the traits absolutely are. And I was like, okay, I can see what I'm passionate about. And the biggest thing was the people side and changing culture and changing the way you can do things. And I love the term operating within the boundaries of compliance. And similar to what you said is, once you know what it is, you can stretch it, because you can help people because you're just confident in the knowledge, you're confident in the regs, once you're confident in that space to say, okay, well, this is what the boundaries are. Now, how can you optimize these boundaries? So in a sense, you're stretching your abilities because you actually understand what this policy means. It's not just whatever it says, it's no, this is actually what it means. So this is how you can live in that moment. So yeah, operating within the boundaries of compliance was a really big thing that someone taught me a long time ago too. So, but yeah, I just really respect the fact, like I said, like-minded, and we're serving industry in a way where it's like, let's get better. And that can be safer, that can be more profitable, that can be longevity. Like, how do you expand your career? Similar to how do you expand your sports career? And yeah, I just think that's super cool. So, but yeah, thanks for all of that. I'm intrigued. I think it's super awesome, man. That's cool. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's interesting, like the comment you just made, and I appreciate that very much. And I do agree with a lot of it. And one of the things that I noticed was, there is this uncertainty around WCB or claims management, because oftentimes, whether you're an employer or a worker, when something happens, one of the fear responses that we have is, am I getting screwed? But really what they're asking is, am I going to be treated fairly in this situation? So I'll get health and safety professionals calling me where they're literally afraid of talking to WCB because they don't want to say the wrong thing, because it could have all these negative implications that they've already come up with, because either they heard it or they think it's government, which, by the way, WCB is not government. It's legislated by the government, but it's not government. It's an insurance company, just like any other. And so a lot of times, I spend probably 80% of my time when I'm actually on the phone with someone, calming them down and giving them information, because I have found that once you give someone information, you make them more certain about the situation. And that's where that confidence now comes, where they can go and deal with it. So, they'll call me and say, WCB asked me for this. Is it okay if I say this? Or what happens if, that? And I'm like, it's okay. What they're asking is this. Here's why they're asking it. Here's where they're going to go with it, depending on what you give them. Now, let's look at what you have. And then walking them through that process and educating. Because my management style, like I said, my focus is not to do that for them. I want to educate them so that the more informed that the industry is, the better it'll be. Because we've all, if you've spent any time in any kind of health and safety course, there's usually a claims management piece. Or if you've gone to the WCB course, what do? You go there, you take a half a day, you take a full day, you get the paperwork, you come back to your office, you throw on the shelf or on your desk, it gets buried. And then 3 months later, you have a claim and you totally forgot everything that was in the course, to all that. And so when you talk about, breaking things down in principles, that's one of the things that I looked at was, what are the patterns? Because people can remember principles better than they can remember the strategy or these other things. So if I can help people understand the principles of a situation, it doesn't matter if they have a claim later. And I often tell them, like, if you get just this one principle, 80% of your problem is solved. And that's where a lot of that focus comes from. And it comes from my background is, when you watch game film after a game, you're looking for the concepts, you're looking at what are the principles that the other team used against you or is going to use against you. How do you break it down? Because you have to share this with 50 other guys and get them all moving in the right direction. And football is great for that, because there's a construct, there's a structure, but you get to adjust it. You go, you're in the game, all of a sudden this isn't working like you thought it was. Make the change, here we go, and then off to the races. So that's what I was saying, like, yeah. And you asked me a few questions there in that one question, and they're all really good. So I just felt it was a good idea to kind of talk about that a little bit.
Power, man. Yeah, something that really stands out with what you just said too, and I'm a massive believer in, is leading with empathy and hearing and then coaching. And I think that's the biggest differentiating factor. A lot of people are sympathetic, and a lot of times people don't want sympathy. They want empathy. They want to be heard, and then they want solution instead of just being heard. Oh, poor you. It's like, no, I don't want that. So I think, that's a really strategic piece, as well as just shows that we're good humans, because being heard, especially in a time of distress, is one of the most empowering things, because it's a light switch. It's okay, I can get through this. I see the light now, and then you carry on. So I think that's a super wise approach, as well as anyone that's your client or anyone that's listening and I'm jacked right now, so like I'm getting dizzy because I shake my head. But it's like, yeah, when I'm dealing with this, someone's hurt. That sucks. What do I do? You want to be heard. You want to allow yourself to be like, I'm just going to get it out there. I got to get this off my body to someone that gets it. So yeah, I just a big shout out to Anthony too and WCB Consulting, because that's powerful, especially in this space when you're dealing with people, you're dealing with lives, possibly careers, possibly fines. People that come up with all great worst case scenarios because they watch too much Law and Order, and you're like, calm down. Like
Yeah.
But I like that. I like that you're coaching it through. It's not a here, like it's no, let's work through this. Let me empower you. Let me educate you. So I think that's super smart. So I have two questions, and then we're going to kind of shift a little bit to specific claims management stuff. So you mentioned the Owlette. So can you kind of highlight whatever you're allowed to say? I'm assuming there's a little bit of confidentiality there or whatever, but can you highlight
stuff you
that
didn't
part
read in TSN?
I just think, yeah, I think that is I'm a massive believer in like building our legacy every day. And when you can share your backstory and you mention something like that, to me, that's a first. So if you want to touch on that experience just a little bit, and then I'll kind of shift my questions a little bit there from there, I should say.
Yeah, it was a fantastic experience. I really enjoyed myself there. Every day you walked into the building, it was like a family, 75 guys all working for a common goal. You're fist bumping, good morning, good morning. You're dealing through adversities. After a bad game, you're coming together, you're trying to figure out what went wrong. Not much more different than industry. If a bad incident happens on site, the company comes together, safety's involved, what happened, so we prevent it from happening again. And I find that a lot of times companies that struggle, they don't have that review. I learned about team structure. That's different than a corporate structure or a government structure, but very similar because the principles are the same. So if you can incorporate the right aspects, you can notice certain patterns and why some teams are successful and why some aren't successful. And I also learned that with the media, what you read in the paper, what you see on TSN is not always the same. But one of the things that I noticed was that it gave me actually a thing that I ask my clients about oftentimes when they're asking about claims management or the significance is, if there was an incident in your company and the news came to interview your employees, not you, but your employees, and they were to ask the question, how does your company treat you when you get hurt? What would they say? And, a lot of times that perks up a lot of people's, ears, and they're thinking, well, that's actually, I never thought about it that way. But as a health and safety person, as someone this, you are a part of that. And so, yeah, it was a fantastic experience. I hope to get back there one day. I look forward to it, but great organization, great people, and still have a lot of friends in those areas. So yeah, it was a great experience.
Incredible. Yeah, I think you can tell who is an athlete at some point. If they're talking about their glory days, I laugh, but it's more so the fist bumps. I find like one of my friends, he was a football player. I can't remember what year he started, sometime in junior high, all the way till he didn't make it to the CFL, but then he got into coaching. And I can't remember the exact story that I was about to share. But anyway, what you were sharing, I kept picturing his face because it's so true. But yeah, like I used to work with a guy named Matt who he played actually with the Owlettes, and he went to the Bombers. I think the year they exchanged, I don't know if they won the Grey Cup the years he switched, but I worked with him in the oil field, and he was that guy. So he was handsome, well-dressed, and he'd fly up to site where I was working, and the atmosphere changed. And when you're kind of painting that picture as you're sharing, that's so true, where it is hard, I think, to shift from everyone's doing it to only you're doing it. And it's different being a nice guy at the company is one thing, but when you have that ingrained in you where, no, it's a good morning. Like we got stuff to do. And yeah, but yeah, that's powerful. And I think that question too, I think of that from a recruitment standpoint, and I can see it absolutely happening post incident. If the news was in your face, asking you a question. So how do you treat your people? I think of that often in transportation because drivers are not always treated the best. And that's something that we're on a mission to help change too, is identify like just how exceptional as people they are. But I think, yeah, that's a really good question. All employers need to ask themselves is how are you treating your people? And if the spotlight was on you, are you comfortable with the answers that you're given? Or are you going to be sheepish and shy and I don't know, but that's a really good point. So it's a really, I like that question. I think that's a really good leading question too, when you're, especially when you're implementing something, because then it's front of mind. And yeah, I think that's super powerful. So I appreciate you sharing that, man. That's huge. So, okay, well, let's kind of shift a little bit more into the consulting side of things. So you mentioned when you were first starting in school, you knew you wanted to have a corporate career for a little bit, but you really wanted to be as an entrepreneur and as a consultant. So can you kind of walk us through, again, I like knowing these things because it empowers others to make decisions. So what ingrained that in you? Is that just how you grew up? You knew at the end of the day you were going to be an entrepreneur? Is it something that happened in school that you're like, okay, maybe it's a financial opportunity, or I always say there's a greater impact opportunity, but for you, what really set that in your brain that I want to get the experience in corporate and then I'm going on my own? Like, can you kind of walk us through that thought process?
Yeah, it definitely started when I was younger. I mean, I could follow the rules, but I also like to test the rules as a kid. And I realized that in a traditional corporate environment, it's not always welcome, depending on the size of the company. You know, I had certain freedoms and certain mindsets, so I knew that I couldn't work for someone long term. Like I could if I had to, if my family was, reliant on it. But if I had the opportunity or the choice, I'd want to bet on myself. So I always saw myself as a business person. I always saw myself as someone who would start off in sports, make their money, do all the things, and then use that to, go into business. That was the dream when I was like 12. Actually, I can remember there was this thing, I can't remember the name of it now, but there was like, how you could buy those little businesses on late night TV. The guy was on at 3 o'clock in the morning, and that I actually convinced my mom to let me start one of those. And it was like a reminder service, which nobody needs now because we all got cell phones and everything dings. But I thought it was a great idea at the time. And, so there was always like little things like that, trying to find ways of buying something for $3 so you could sell it for $5. So you could go to the store and buy a chocolate bar kind of thing. And, yeah, I just translated when I was older. And I think one thing, if I was to give advice to somebody, is that oftentimes when I talk a lot about this with the younger guys, especially high school kids, when I was coaching them and other things, that, excuse me, when you're younger, people think that, well, if you're doing a job, it's like a career. But every job I've ever had, whether it was sales or a stock boy at a grocery store, or delivering newspapers, or this, taught me something that I ended up using later in my career. And I think a lot of times we get stuck in a job because of the money or because of whatever, and it's like, well, this is what I have to do now because I got to pay these bills. But when I went to WCB, I knew that in my heart I didn't want to be there long term. So instead of looking at it as a job where I was going to work and getting caught up in the grind, because it is tough. I mean, you're dealing, and I have a lot of empathy for the case managers and that, where 40 claims and people calling, and I've had death threats, I've had all kinds of things happen, just like anybody else. I was in the building when the the hostage situation was happening in Alberta. It was a difficult time, but what I remembered is that I was there as if university. I'm going to get paid to do work. They're paying me to learn the system and to learn how these things work so that I can go into private industry and help them my way. Because WCB is also handcuffed in some of the things that they can do for obvious reasons. But when you understand the principles in the system, then you can go in private industry. So that was more my mindset, was I'm going to take my 5 years. And actually I was ahead of schedule. I thought I was going to be a case manager about 2-3 years in, and then spend only 2 years as a case manager and then go out. But what actually ended up happening was within the first year, I became a case manager. So I was ahead of schedule, which allowed me to get into more complex situations. And I mean, it was a great exposure as well, because 40 claims on average every day, and they're cycling through it. So as one, leaves your desk, another one's coming. You had no choice but to learn the system and learn it quickly. And I had great mentors who put a lot of good information into me and gave me different strategies. And for those that are on the call, even in your own business, one of my mentors said, when you come to me with a question, find out what the issue is, find the answer, and then have a rationale for your answer before you come to me with a question. And then I can tell you if you're right, wrong, or what you need to do differently. And that was tremendous, because it allowed me to seek things on my own, find the answers, and then really get the skills that I needed, that I would need later on as an entrepreneur, and that I'm passing on now to the people that I work with, is giving them the same opportunities and resources, just pointing them in a little bit better direction because they're not in that space, but giving them that opportunity to do that so that they can learn for themselves. So that was kind of the thought process.
Yeah, I really respect that. And I like how your mentor approached that, because he equipped you, or he equipped you with the tools, and then they gave you some validation at the end. And I think a lot of the times that process is missed from a workplace mentor, where this is the question, this is the answer, you should have known that answer, or this is the question, I don't know the answer. So the fact that they trained you to excel in the space that you wanted to go, props to them for sure. And I like that approach that you took too, where it's really easy to get distracted with the water cooler talk and the gossips and all the burdens of a company, instead of, okay, what's the ultimate goal? I want to learn the systems. I want to master these processes. And it was awesome that you got to experience a little more in-depth cases kind of faster than you hoped to, because I think that really, the more confident you get in the goals and the directions that you're going, just the better off you feel making decisions that may be tough. So that's some really good feedback, especially to mentors listening to this too, where it's not always what just giving the answer. Sometimes it's exactly that. It's setting the stage to allow that person or that employee to be better. And I think that, they did a good job with you with that space, because I think that's probably a big thing for you now, is someone's coming to you for a question. So you can reciprocate that in the industry, instead of, like, I say I'm really good at Control F. Like, what's the question on this? Oh, one second, let me pull up the regs, Control F. Then I can walk someone through. This is kind of how and then it simplifies a really technical process. So good for you. That's awesome. So like I mentioned, we're going to shift a little bit into the claim side of things now. So can you kind of highlight what is a claim and what is claims management? So I don't know if it's differentiating. So if I'm an employee or if I'm an employer, if it means different things. But the question is, what is a claim? And then what is claims management? Like at kind of a high level.
Sure. So the answer I'm going to give applies to all industries, all sizes of companies, and any location in Canada, essentially, and the United States. The United States has a different system, a little bit different. Principles of claims management is the same, or disability management is the same. But essentially what happens is someone's injured at work, and because of that injury, they have some sort of loss, whether that's a loss of function or financial. And so they file a claim with WCB, whose job is specifically just to manage work-related claims. If it's found that, yes, this is a WCB claim, this is a legit work injury, they accept the claim. And then what claims management is managing that loss. So if someone is unable to do their normal job, it's finding them modified work. That's a big word that gets thrown around a lot, modified work. Getting them set up with the right doctors in the right way in order to minimize that loss and get them back to work as safely and quickly as possible, for a variety of benefits, both for the worker and the employer. And so one of the things I always talk about with clients is your job is to give the worker everything that they're legally entitled to, but in the most cost-effective way for you. So, excuse me, if you have questions about the validity of a claim, that's fine. but at the same time, if it's been accepted and you still have issues, there's ways to deal with that where you're still managing the situation while you're working in the background trying to fix, get a certain way. And it's working together, creating that team and that trust, because oftentimes I find when it comes to claims management, there is a lack of trust, and that can also be an extension of the way that the business operates. And whenever you lose trust in any organization, the people stop serving one another, and they start looking out for their own interests. So, and I'll give you an example on both sides, right? So you have someone who makes a claim, but they reported it late. They're really sketchy on the details, and they don't want to cooperate or participate. Naturally, the employer is going to lose trust in that person, and now you have an issue. On the other side, someone gets hurt, they follow all the rules, but the employer isn't offering modified. They're, everyone that's ever worked for them that had a claim got laid off. All these things, the employees don't trust the employer. So how do you fix that? How do you solve that? And that's one of the things that I really work with people, is to say, here's how you create this better environment where you trust one another. Because then, and I've tested this with every size of company, different industries across Canada, and it's been successful, is that you can then go to work and say, here's the situation, here's what you can expect, here's how we're going to deal with this. Where do you have concerns? Where do you have issues? They tell you, and you work together to resolve it. But in the same respect, you can also explain to the worker why these things are significant to the company. Because in a warm and fuzzy world, everything is, oh, we just want to take care of this. But at the end of the day, this is about dollars and cents. And I'm very conscientious of that. But at the same time, you are dealing with people. People have feelings, people have problems, people have situations that they have to deal with. And so claims management is not just dealing with an injury, it's dealing with the whole thing, the person's personal issues, family issues, because that can all impact recovery, and as well as corporate mandates and objectives. So my definition is a little long and a little different, but because I want people to understand that it's not just about a WCB claim. There's so much more going on that people forget. But if you can keep that in mind and address them, the WCB claim becomes much easier to manage.
Yeah, I can see that. And I like that breakdown from both sides too, because I think employers, when details are sketchy, and again, speaking from experience, it's easy to say, like you just really, there's a lot of doubt. And on the flip side, when an employer's reputation is to lay off injured workers and something legitimate happens, same thing through experience, you're really like, I don't know, I got food to put on the table, so I'll walk with a limp so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I could. So I like the word trust. I'm really big in that space too. So would you say, from a claims perspective, trust is the biggest hurdle that both parties have to navigate, I guess?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. So is there prevention methods, if that's the right question, in that both parties can do? So if you're a stand-up employee, is there certain things that you can be doing, as well as if you're a stand-up employer, that you can be doing to help build trust right away? Like, a claim happens, we need to make sure we're all above board. Is there some insight there that you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, that's absolutely. It has to start with the employer. And the reason why is because you're the one with the organization. You're the one who created the team. You're the one who started this company, and you brought people on board. So I'm not in the mindset that, you blame mommy and daddy for the kid being the way that they are. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is there is a culture that's built. And a lot of times what I work with companies is that, I'll give you an example. There was a company that had a positive culture. Everything was going right. They say, hey, we care about your health and safety. So this person says that I have this workplace injury. This is how it happened. This is when it happened. It happened some time ago, and the details were actually incorrect. So when the safety person said, why would you lie about the information you're giving? And the safety person was taking it personally, like, what did I do to you? Or what did I show you that you couldn't trust me to tell me this? They were getting upset. So my question to the safety person was, well, how do the supervisors and frontline management deal with your frontline staff on a day-to-day basis? I said, well, I don't know. So followed up with it, came back and realized that whenever frontline staff made a mistake or didn't meet quota or whatever, frontline supervision was very disciplinary. So naturally, they've created this culture, even though the leadership up top was on board and understood the situation and creating this culture, people underneath them were saying something else to the employees. So once this got addressed, they were able to now re-educate frontline management, explain, and help change that culture. So this is where I'm saying is that being a health and safety person is a tough spot to be, because, you know, they say that stuff rolls downhill, but for a safety person, it rolls downhill and uphill at the same time, and you're caught in the middle, or whoever's dealing with claims, because management wants to know what's going on and how much is this going to cost us. And the people underneath are saying, how are you going to take care of me and how are we going to deal with this? And you're caught in the middle. So this is why I say, educate yourselves on the system, educate yourself on what it means, because the first thing you want to do in order to prevent these kind of situations is create a culture that encourages people to report things. Now that may sound counterintuitive. People, I've had these discussions, people are like, oh, I don't want them to report things because they're going to report everything. No, because here's the thing. What we've found is that when you create a culture that's receptive to reporting things, you find out about the little cuts, the little minor bumps and bruises that tend to turn into, at some point, the 6-month, 12-month claim that spirals out of control and really is what costs you money, where you could have dealt with it had you known about it right in the beginning, and it would have been next to nothing in cost, plus a minor blip in production and all these other things. What it also does is the workforce polices itself. Everybody knows who's the a-hole in the company. Everyone knows who's the stand-up guy, who's the silent leader, who's this. So if you're on a crew, or you're working with people, or you're working in an industry, and you know that so-and-so is always causing problems, and now they made a claim, if they have any information, they're more likely to provide it and police each other, which is going to help you. And vice versa. You will see where the workforce will band together against the company and the managers if they're being mismanaged, and protect themselves. So the way that you prevent that in a lot of ways is creating that culture where you're working together and you're encouraging people to report things quickly. But then as a company, knowing how to manage that. So sitting the person down saying, okay, we're going to take you to the doctor because you know the process already. You're going to take you to the doctor. After the doctor, we're going to do this. We're going to fill out these forms. And if you need to go home, here's what's going to happen. We're going to do this and this. And if not, here's our modified work program. Here's what you can expect. And as things change, we're going to adjust it and work with you so that we get the result that we both want. Because 95% of people are scared because they're wondering how they're going to put food on the table. And if you can alleviate that fear, they're going to work with you. And then the fear that you have about the negative statistic, the WCB premiums, the overhead costs, all those things are going to get taken care of because you have someone who's cooperative and works with you. But as soon as you start removing any of those things, you're going to have a tough time.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And that was a really great explanation, because again, I think when you're in the hustle of your day to day, you forget about what other people are going through. But when you can, well, I guess that's why what you just shared was so strong, because as I'm listening, I'm like, yeah, I can see that. Okay, I can see that side. Okay, yeah, you can see that side. So it's nice to see the Google Earth perspective where you're seeing all of the pie, not just your view on it. And yeah, really, everyone's actions do have an impact. So, okay, that's phenomenal. So one question that I did have, and I'm super jacked about, is the fact that you have a bunch of training compiled. So is it safe to say the pictures that you just painted in my mind and to our listeners' mind, that's how you educate as well through your like online training and stuff? Or can you kind of walk us through your training programs?
Sure. So on my website, under online courses, we have 6 courses that touch on various different parts of the WCB process. And then we have 2 orientation videos. One is for employers, for leadership, management, anyone in that kind of role where they have people underneath them, to educate them on their roles, responsibilities, and what claims management or WCB process is. It is generalized enough that it applies to across Canada and in parts of North America. And then on the other side, there's a worker one. So if you're hiring a new worker, it's a 10-15 minute video. They get a certificate of completion. Every course comes with a certificate of completion for records. And then you can hold on to that and keep those records. And you can repeat those orientations every year. So if you have someone that's been there for 10 years, every year, have them do it once just to refresh them. And then you have that record that, hey, they know about your process. They know the roles and responsibilities. And it kind of sets the tone in the company of, we care. And what I mean by that is, oftentimes a company says, we care about your health and safety. Look at all this PPE and all these rules and regulations that we've come in place to keep you safe. But then when they get hurt, they have no idea what to do when the person's health has actually been put into jeopardy. So the other part of it is setting up a proper claims management program in your organization. What does that involve? What documentation? How to use that documentation? So what I did when I created these courses is I went to the industry and I talked to health and safety professionals and said, what are your biggest barriers? What are your biggest concerns and objections? Because one of the ones that I found was, I don't have enough time. I've got 50,000 things to do, and I'm the WCB person for the company, and it's just the last thing on the plate. And so I don't have time. So through the courses, what I show is that here's how you create time. And here's how, if you spend this much time up front, you save hours and hours later down the road. If you've ever seen the show, The First 48, they said, if you can't find the murder in the first 48 hours, the chances of you doing that dramatically reduces. Same thing with claims management. The more information you get in the first 48 hours really determines how long you're going to be involved in this claim down the road. And the biggest issue I found is that they didn't collect the evidence, they didn't collect the documentation and the information they needed. So setting up the claims management program, how to manage claims, how to appeal claims, those are two other ones. And then one thing that you talked about, which I thought was really cool, was how to talk to somebody. So how to conduct an interview safety. If you're a woman who's having to interview someone, where you position yourself in the room, how do you, put yourself in those positions? Even as a man, like I'm 6'4", 240, I would make sure I set myself up in a room in a certain way, because you never know what the other person's thinking and what could upset them. How do you calm down a situation? How do you use your tone of voice? How do you, your body language? All of this stuff, how to create modified programs. And that what I really try to do is, as you can tell, even by the way I'm talking, is that really provide as much information as possible. And most of the courses are 45 minutes, about 45 minutes to 2 hours. So they can be done at your own pace, self-directed, and it's focused on principles. So you'll have examples, you'll have example conversations. In the appeals program, I actually give you the template that we use, so that when most WCBs, your appeals are documentary, meaning you have to write a letter, not verbally. And what ends up happening is we give you the template, we show you how to use the template, so that when you submit your letter, it's in a nice chronological order that they can follow. And when I do that, one of the things that I talk about with people, and this is some information that comes from the appeals course, that oftentimes we put in a claim and we want to appeal it right away if we don't agree with it. And that's not really the right way to do things. And the reason why, an effective way. I don't like you saying right and wrong. It's not an effective way of doing things. What you want to do is you want to present your information, but then what you want to do is, if the decision doesn't go in your way, have you ever seen in sports where a penalty gets called on a team and the coach, by yelling at the referee, has had the referee go, you know what, you're right, my bad, no penalty, the coach was right? Never happened.
Yeah.
Same thing when it comes to this WCB thing, is that if they've made their decision, you screaming and yelling on the phone is not going to get the decision changed. But what you do, and I think I have a YouTube video of it, is you ask 3 questions. What was your decision? Because you want them to clarify what the decision was. What evidence did you look at? So you want to know what reports do they look at, because you might find out they didn't look at the report that you wanted them to that could change the decision. And then what was your rationale? Meaning, how does the evidence and the policy that you understand come up with the decision that you did that goes against what I want? So the biggest mistake people make when they don't get a decision their way is they don't get curious. The faster you get curious, the faster you become Sherlock Holmes and use that as an opportunity to get information from them as opposed to give information to them. You can then go back, provide new evidence, or get them to change your perspective or change your argument to fit what they've told you. So when you go to the next level of appeal, because there's multiple levels of appeals, you're much more effective in getting what you want. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that I talk about. And the course goes into a lot more detail on how to do that. But that's one of the biggest things that I talk about with people is when you're on the phone with WCB, not that you want to be their friend, but treat them as professionals. Because if you don't know how to work with WCB, how do you expect them to work with you? So you treat them like people, because they're mothers, they're fathers, they're people with kids who didn't get enough sleep last night, or maybe didn't, I guess I could say, didn't get laid last night, or whatever it is, right? They got their own problems, yes. Right? And so you screaming at them is not going to change it. Take a second, step out of yourself, catch a breath, get the information you need so that you can get what you want down the road.
I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah, I coach the same thing with dealing with law enforcement. At the end of the day, they're breathing human beings just like we are. And yeah, I like that analogy too. I've never seen a coach win from screaming a dispute. So I actually made a note on that. So it's yeah, no, that's a lot. Honestly, it's a lot of depth, but it's, maybe I'm speaking from experience. So if you're brand new, this is the first time you've listened to anything on claims management, yes, it's a lot, but I can see the guidance and I can see, take this step, take this step. Now you know what you're doing. Okay, great. Like I can see that being really applied in your training, and it's nice. Again, it's easy. It's wcbconsulting.ca. And yeah, I like this. Again, we were talking about your website before, and I really like the language that you use, because again, it's, you want to be able to share stuff that's really at times can be dry, can be hard to learn in a practical way. And again, everything that I've seen, our conversations, you do a really good job at that. So I think just, yeah, those listening that are like, oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's nice because you're empowering people and you're empowering change. So I'm really excited to just, yeah, to see the impact that the training is going to have on industry and on employers going through claims, really stressed out to, okay, we got this. I get the flow. I get what I'm supposed to do. And I think you did a really good job at that. So well done. That's awesome, man.
Thank you.
So yeah, absolutely. So a question that I like to ask, because I talk about it all the time, is legacy. And I'm a massive believer in building our legacy every day. And that could be as simple as I entered a room, I left a room. How did I impact those people? To much more diverse stuff like claims management. So as you continue to navigate in your space, what's kind of the legacy that you're hoping to leave behind? If it's a daily, if it's throughout the course of your career, but yeah, what is your focus on legacy?
That's a good question. I mean, I think, in order to be successful, you have to have a long-term vision, but then there's small goals that happen in between then to get you to that long-term vision. And, originally when WCB Consulting.ca was started, it was to give information to people and show them there was a better way to manage claims. But what was happening was I was managing the claims, or some of my staff was managing the claims under the principles that we come up with. And I thought, and we kind of talked about this in previously, is that I could have every contract in Canada and every company come to me, but I'd never be off the phone. I could never service them appropriately. So what I did was I tried to say, okay, well, how do I give this information to people so that when you're having those conversations and someone says, oh, I have a WCB claim and it's a mess, the long-term goal is that, oh, you need to call WCB Consultant, or you need to check this out. Because one of the things that we want to do is in-person training or in-house training for companies where we come into your company and we teach you and we do all these things. Because then we exponentially replicate the information and it's accurate. And that was the thing. It needed to be accurate. It needed to make sense. I mean, humans do a great job of complicating simple things. It's just what we do. And so we need to provide information that's simple. I wanted to make sure that when someone's having a thing, they're saying, oh, these are the guys you go talk to. That's what I wanted to be known. Not the people like, oh, just dump it on them, they'll take care of it. Yes, we can do that. But what my legacy, what I really wanted to be is that on the short term, it's that every night when I put my head on my pillow, I ask myself, like, did I do what I wanted to do today? Did I act within my own personal integrity? And if I didn't do that, then I don't sleep easy. And then I need to figure out how to fix that, because that means there's something wrong with my identity and you know, how I carry myself. So if the answer is yes, then I have a good night's sleep, and then I want to improve on it the next day. How can I make that better? Because like you said, WCB, claims management, even health and safety, it's so dry. How do you make it entertaining? How do you make it relatable? How do you make it, is recallable a word?
It is today.
The ability, it is today. You know, and what I mean by that is there's a lot of knowledge out there. Like, you can watch YouTube videos, you can listen to podcasts, you can do this. Okay, so I have this knowledge, but how do I apply it? And one of the analogies I use, and I guess that there's the legacy, is that there's a lot of people going out there giving cookbooks to people and saying, make this recipe. And if people follow the recipe, they can usually bake that cake or whatever it is. What I'd hope to get to at one point is that I want to make chefs, because a chef can take that cookbook and that recipe, and because they understand how the ingredients interact with each other, how they work, they can swap out and do all these different things to make something even better. And that's ultimately what I want to get to, is that spend enough time with me and the resources that I'm putting out there, and hopefully you'll become a chef in your own industry and in whatever it is that you do. And it doesn't matter if you're a driver, if you're the owner, if you're the safety person, if you're the admin staff in this. You know, when I was in sales, they said everyone is a salesperson in a company, because the admin staff goes into the grocery store and someone asks, well, what do they do? They're literally selling their company. Oh, I work for this company. This is what they do. This is how they treat me. This is how things are. That's what I want to be able to help people do, is that why not just be champions for one another in these things? And you know, being on the road for 8+ hours a day, I'm sure a lot of guys have a lot of time to think and do things and that, but you're your own champion a lot of times. And so what are you putting out there? How are you contributing? All these things. It's a combination of personal development plus claims management and creating a product that people will find entertaining. Because if they're not entertained, they're not going to listen to it. They're not going to buy it. And then people want to know they made the right decision. Well, how do they know that? First, they go with their feeling. They say, yep, this is what I want to get. And then they justify the decision by the results it gives them. And that's what I hope to put out there. So as your listeners may have already seen, that I have long-winded responses and that, but hopefully there's a point in there that if you take something away from it, then it's a positive.
Totally, man. Yeah, I see it, which is awesome, because that's what I call it, building your legacy every day. And those aren't like, I didn't create that term. I just really believe in that outlook where it's self-reflection. So putting your head on the pillow to what is the end result? Where do you want to go? And yeah, I think you're doing a really, really good job living that every day, because yeah, you've had an impact on myself, obviously, our mutual friend, Eric, and you're kind of like, yeah, okay, this is happening and the impact is there. And to me, that's what I define as a pivotal impact, is the chef theory, where it's because of you. When someone's at a fork in the road, the pivotal impact happens the moment someone can make a decision based off of the advice given, and it was the right decision that bettered their life, bettered their profession, bettered their family life, all of that. And that's exactly what you're doing, is you're setting the stage for pivotal impacts, like, constantly. So hats off, man. You have beyond my respect, but I'm super pumped. And so it's nice to see. So kind of as we come to a close, can you kind of highlight again, how do people get in contact with you as a person, as a company, and any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So my website is WCBconsulting.ca. We have the online course section. There's also common questions. And I will admit, I haven't done the greatest job of keeping that up to date as of late. We really put a lot of focus in the last few months in developing the online courses and just released them a few weeks ago. So there's a common questions section in there. If anyone has a question, they've been listening to this, or they have a question, info@wcbconsulting.ca, or you can fill out the form on the website. Either myself or one of my staff will get back to you. Really what I want to encourage is that if there's a WCB question or a WCB issue and you're not 100% sure, even if you're a worker and you've been injured, I do have contacts. Like I said, we want to be known as the place to go to get the information. So if you're looking for employer representation, that obviously we can help you. But if you're a worker who's looking for help, I have colleagues that can address that for you. I do have a YouTube channel. I think if you just put WCB Consulting into YouTube, it should come up, where I try to give little tips in 1-2 minute videos discussing a little bit more. Again, that hasn't been as updated as I'd like it to be, but that's going to change in the next little bit. So you can subscribe to that. Otherwise, yeah, those are the main ways, but definitely email. And then we do our best to try to get about a 24-hour turnaround for people so that you're not waiting, because I mean, who has time to wait when we're not feeling all that well? But and last things are, in terms of information, is that there's a lot of resources out there, and I do encourage people to do that. One of the things I would say is, if you're a business owner, prevention is key, absolutely, but I think there needs to be some more focus on the management after an incident and how do you manage that situation. You can have fire detectors, you can have the best security system, but it's what you do when the fire breaks out. You don't want the fire department to show up with a garden hose. You want them to come in with the right equipment, right? So that kind of mindset. And for employees, it's, report things on time, follow the structure, have that communication with your company. And if the company isn't going to treat you right, I know it's easier said than done, but there's other companies and there's other things that you can do. And if you're frontline staff or safety, really educate yourself on things, because I think what ends up happening is a lot of people get put into leadership roles without truly understanding what it's like to be a leader or what it is to be a leader. And truthfully, I'm still asking myself that same question. I'm still trying to find a better way of being a leader for my staff, for my athletes, for my clients. And so never stop growing, because I think, the best advice I ever received is, once you stop asking questions, and that includes the questions of yourself, you stop growing. And once you think you know it all, that's when you start losing, and you become, I don't want to say the dumber person in the room, but it's, if everyone else is growing and you're staying still, I think this Tony Robbins said, you're not growing, you're dying. So
Yes.
I take that to heart. And I think companies, even if you're making money, if you're doing the right things, you can always do things better. And yeah, just be informed, know where to go to find information, and whether it's us or somebody else, find the information, test the information. And yeah, I think that's about it. That's kind of what we go by. So
Powerful, man. Yeah, today, honestly, I'm dizzy because this is awesome. And it's nice because a couple of things happened today. So one, I love highlighting experts and industry leaders. So this was a big goal for myself, just to, okay, well, who is Anthony? Who is WCB Consulting? So I think we really smashed it out of the park. But it's also really nice to know that anyone listening, so you'd said a couple of things that I think were instant trust builders. And I'm really a fan of that, because that's obviously the goal of the podcast, is to say, Josh introduced leader to X. Yes, you can trust him. And it's not because I said that. It's through the conversation where people can say, man, yeah, okay, Anthony gets it. he's a human being. He has personal experience in this. And I think you shared a really good overview, again, of who you are, what your company is about, some specifics. The training I'm super jacked on too, because I think it's a big need in the industry. And it's just like, yes, I can stand at the mountaintops and say, I trust this guy. Contact this guy. Let's do this. Where, again, you're helping me accomplish that goal, because when you truly define what is the transportation industry, it's an eye opener to a lot of people, because most people think semi-trailer over the road, that's trucking, when really that's a small percentage of actual trucking when you go through definitions and all that stuff. But claims management, based off the definition of employer and employee, huge, millions of people. So the fact that you're able to impact that many people strategically, and again, I'm a big fan of online training. So that piece right there is huge. But you built trust. Yeah, today was awesome. And I'm honestly stoked to do more, like we talked about, where just maybe it's more specifics, maybe it's listeners saying, hey, can you specify this? But yeah, I think you crushed it today, man. So I appreciate it. And just to all of our listeners, honestly, as you can tell, I get super jacked, and this conversation was awesome. Highly, highly recommend working with Anthony, WCBconsulting.ca. So if you're an employer, you need to check it out. If you're an employee, like Anthony said, he's got people to help you out. But also, if you're an employee and you're in an environment where you're like, I don't think my employer has any of this in place, reach out to Anthony and plant some seeds, because that's how our community gets better, is when you identify, okay, this is the opportunity that we need to get to. And if you're an employee and you see it and your employer just doesn't know, they use the I'm too busy reasoning, protect yourself and make sure that you're kind of that link. And again, that's just a huge opportunity. So yeah, but again, Anthony, thank you so much for just your time today. It's a Saturday. We're both investing into ourselves and into our industry while the wives are waiting. So again, this was just awesome, but I really do appreciate your time, man. This was very good. Very well done. So thank you so much.
Thank you. No, like I said, I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun for me. And as you can tell, my wife says I talk too much sometimes, but I do enjoy talking, and I can talk about this for days. So football, WCB, I'll talk about it all day. So I hope, there was value there. And like I said earlier, is that trust is built by serving others. And so if this is the platform and this is the way that God's blessed me to do it, then I'm all for it. So thank you again. And yeah, definitely. I look forward to doing this again one day.
Awesome, babe. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much again. Bye. Well, Anthony, honestly, thank you so much for your time today. I feel super excited just on the value and the passion that was shared in today's conversation, but more so the expertise and honestly the ease. You really do a really good job just making everything sound really like streamlined. This is what we do. This is how we help. This is how we serve. So yeah, again, thank you so much. For those listening, I highly recommend that you check out his website. So it's WCB Consulting. So www.wcbconsulting.ca. Check out their online training. It is industry leading, super hyped on just all of the good things Anthony's put together. But yeah, if you have a question, if you're an employer or you're an employee, reach out to Anthony. All of his contact details, of course, are in the show notes below. And again, Anthony, thank you so much. So a big shout out to all of our dedicated listeners. Honestly, thank you so much. Everything that from the verbal support to honestly, we've gotten a couple of nice messages lately. It just means the world. And as we're just continue on this journey, I'm just so grateful for you and everything that you're doing to support us. Our goal is really that simple. We're connecting industry leaders just like Anthony to the industry to help create a pivotal change. So if this is even the first time actually that you've listened to the podcast, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm a massive believer in the greater the following, the greater the impact, because at the end of the day, it's a community and it's a collective effort to really help change the transportation industry and to really highlight all of the positives that really there's tons within. So again, thank you so much for the support. If you are watching this on YouTube, I ask that you subscribe, but also hit the bell. So that way you're notified of upcoming episodes. We do release different videos, about 1 or 2, maybe 3 times a week, kind of depending. But also if you're listening to this on any major podcast platform, I highly recommend that you subscribe. So same thing, you're notified of upcoming episodes. And again, Anthony, thank you so much. Thank you just to our collective audience. Really appreciate all of the support. And finally, if you've not yet done so, I highly recommend that you check out our monthly newsletter. You can sign up below, but it's another way for our industry leaders to really inject knowledge and discounts and how-tos and advice into industry, just in a more written format. But you can do that just by signing up, by following the link below. And again, thank you so much. Thank you again, Anthony. Really appreciate it, and hope you have a wonderful day. See you, everyone. Bye.